Hello, I want to teach you about the general process of logging student teaching hours, which hours you need to log, some of the ideas and theories behind it, as well as some of the practical tips on how it works. So there are two basic understandings that we want you to come away with at the end of this. First, you need to log your hours regularly and accurately. That means every day you'll log your hours. You don't wait till the end of the week and then look back and think about it. Do it on a daily basis. Every day that you're accruing student teaching hours, you'll log them. You also have to log them accurately. We don't want you estimating. You were able to round up to the nearest 15 minutes, but that's it, because if we, Northwest University, are audited by the state, we have to account for every single student teacher's student teaching hours. And we do expect you to log your hours accurately and honestly. And the second thing is that not all hours are loggable. Just because you're in a classroom doesn't mean that those hours count as your student teaching hours. There are some conditions that apply we're going to go over. So first off, let's talk about logging your hours accurately. Like I said, we want you to log the actual time, not your estimated time. That's a pretty straightforward thing. So one of the ways we do that, on a day that you're counting student teaching hours, we have a general parking lot to parking lot rule. The moment you pull into the parking lot is when your hours start, and when you walk out to your car at the end to leave, that's when your hours end. Excuse me. Again, that won't be for every day, but it will be for the days that you are counting your student teaching hours. Any work that you do outside of school, even if you're planning lessons, does not count. It's only when you're on the school grounds, in the school building, that you can count your student teaching hours. So again, even if you're doing legitimate work for school outside of school, it does not count. Like I said, you can round up to 15-minute increments. And when we look at the actual video for how to log your hours, I'll show you how that works. And then this is an important point. Which hours you could log varies according to your role. So some people in our GYO program are paraeducators. They have one set of rules for which hours they can log. Others are working part-time as paras and maybe other time as office staff. They will have a different set. And some people have emergency certifications and are acting as the classroom teacher, and they will have a different set of rules. I'm not going to go over those right now. Those will be communicated to you by your district or by our field coordinator. But I just want you to be aware that different roles have different ways of accounting for which hours they can log. So let me show you how you will log your hours in Foliotech. This is a sample page from our on-ground Masters in Teaching program. So your page will not say Masters in Teaching, it would say Grow Your Own right here at the top. And over in here you have application elements, program evaluations, and other things that you'll learn about elsewhere. For now, we're going to talk about field evaluations. So if you click on this, it opens up this page. Now, some of these don't apply to you. For example, in the Grow Your Own, you don't do AVID. But you do your field experience logs. So right now, we are looking at field experience logs. So I'll click on that. Now, in the MIT program, on ground, we name things differently. Yours here would say Student Teaching 1, Student Teaching 2, Student Teaching 3, Student Teaching 4, and Student Teaching 5, which correspond with the 5 different student teaching courses that you will take. And the way you log your hours is simple, and I'm just going to pick this one to demonstrate. It takes a second to load. So you would enter your mentor teacher, the school and district you're in, and the grade level and subject area. That's fairly self-explanatory. So let's say that you, it's today, June 29th, and let's say that you came in for your student teaching, you pulled into the parking lot at 7:45. Okay, so remember, we go parking lot to parking lot. So you pulled in the parking lot at 7:45, and you took note of that somewhere, and then you left that day, you got back to your car at 4 o'clock. Okay, so this is really important. We allow you to round to the nearest 15 minutes. Usually you can round up. But I'm not saying, oh, when I think I got there that morning, or when I think I left. No, you actually will keep track of it, and when you log it that evening, when you log your hours, you will log the exact time that you were there. And this is a grand total of, it looks like 8 hours and 15 minutes. So you'll enter this, as it says here, in decimal points. That's 8.25. Okay, and then tomorrow, if I were to go back in, I would do the same thing, etc., etc. It's fairly straightforward. What's really important is that you log the actual hours that you student taught, not the estimated hours. I don't want you to, at the end of the week on Friday, go back and enter hours for the whole week. We prefer you do this on a daily basis so that your hours are accurate and reflect the actual time of student teaching. That's pretty simple. Thanks. So let's talk about which hours are loggable. Washington State differentiates between two different types of field experiences. The first are what we call clinical practice field experiences. And in clinical practice experiences, you are in a classroom that is in your endorsement area. So if you're being endorsed in, let's say, elementary education and ELL, you would either, to log your hours, you'd have to be in a general elementary ed classroom or in an ELL classroom. Or if your endorsement was elementary education and special ed, you would have to be in a special ed classroom or a general education elementary classroom. If you were, say, to take some time and sub in, say, the PE classroom or the music class, you could not count those hours because they are not in your endorsement area and they are not clinical practice hours. Secondly, you will have an assigned mentor teacher in a clinical practice setting. So this is fairly straightforward. If you are in your general ed classroom and you have an assigned mentor teacher, or in, say, your ELL classroom and you have an assigned mentor teacher, even if he or she is not in the classroom at the moment, you can still count those hours if there is a mentor teacher assigned to you in that room. And the same is true of the university field supervisor. You have to have one assigned to you to that classroom. They don't have to be present, but they have to be assigned to that classroom. The other kind of field experience hours are what the state calls non-clinical practice. Non-clinical practice hours would be outside of your endorsement area. They might be unsupervised, or they take place outside of regularly contracted school hours. In that case, you cannot, I repeat, you cannot count those hours. So you cannot log those. So the only loggable hours are clinical practice hours in your endorsement area with an assigned mentor teacher and an assigned university field supervisor. And like I said earlier, each role has a different arrangement of which work hours count as loggable clinical practice hours. You can only log the hours that fit your particular work assignment. And as student teaching progresses, as you go from student teaching 1 to the course student teaching 2, and then student teaching 3, etc., the number of loggable hours will increase for each of those courses. The exception is if you are in a situation where you are already the teacher of record, say an emergency cert situation, in which case you can count all your hours from the very beginning. So here are the minimum requirements that you have to meet in order to get through our program regarding student teaching hours. You must accrue a total of at least 900 clinical practice hours. You'll spend much more time than that in your classroom, but 900 of those hours must be clinical practice hours. They should be spread out over the course of a single K-12 school year. Like I just said, each subsequent student teaching course will require increasing loggable hours. And then finally, at least 6 weeks of those loggable hours, this is in that 900 total, at least 6 weeks of that must be accrued in your secondary endorsement classroom. So if your first endorsement is special education, the bulk of your time will be spent in that class. And most of the hours you accrue will be in that class. But at least 6 weeks of those hours have to be accrued in your other endorsement, in elementary ed or in ELL and general education. Whatever your primary endorsement is, most of your hours will come there. But you also have a second endorsement if you're doing special ed or ELL. And you have to get at least 6 weeks of your hours from that other endorsement for both endorsements to count. And because of the nature of special ed and ELL, those have to piggyback onto another endorsement. So we have to get both. And that's up to you and your field supervisor to make sure that you are dividing your hours appropriately between those two endorsements.